Hi, welcome to Psychic Tapestry. I'm Ken Kessler and she's Toni DeMaio. Hi, Toni.
Hey Ken, it's really nice to be here tonight
It's
in the
it's
new
nice to have
year.
you. Yes, Happy New
Happy
Year. Happy
New
New
Year.
Year to everybody. I know that we're recording this on January 7th and it's almost been a week since New Year's, but this is our first episode of 2025. So, Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us on Zoom for those who are here. If you're listening to this episode later, it was recorded on January 7th on Zoom. And if you would like to join us for the next recording, just keep an eye on the calendar at psychictapestry.com or on our social media, and you'll know when the next episode is coming so that you can be here. There are a bunch of ways to connect, whether you're here live with us now or whether you're listening to this later. We're on Facebook and Twitter, facebook.com/psychic tapestry and at psychic tapestry on Twitter. And that's it, really. Well, if you're listening to this episode on your phone, there's also a little link at the top that says send us a text message, and you can connect that way. The thing about that is that we can't text back. So you can send us a message or a question or a comment or whatever that way, and we will talk about it on the next episode. That's the best we can do because that's how the platform works. So
Mhm.
thanks for your indulgence. This was an episode that we tried to do 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I don't even remember what happened that kept us from doing it. So I
A
don't know
big
why I even,
storm. A big
yeah, it
storm.
could have been a big storm.
It was.
We did get some crazy weather in December.
Mhm.
Not that there isn't some crazy weather going on now, um,
Yeah.
all around the rest of the country. But anyhow, what we wanted to talk about were the topic is about metaphysical psychic abilities and whether they're a blessing or a curse. And
Mhm.
I certainly have an opinion about that. Toni, what
Do you want to know my opinion on this?
I do.
Okay. Well, I have two opinions on this, the two popular opinions. I guess it's all a matter of perception, and it depends on the day, truly, in my life. But I've been seeing dead people since I was a little tiny person. So, when I was really little, I guess my first impression of psychic abilities was that this is, interesting. It's cool that I'm different from everybody. Even though I was like two or three, I remember thinking, I think it's kind of cool that not everybody can do this and I can. I do remember thinking that. But then again, I was seeing some frightening apparitions. There was an old man with a butcher knife who would come every night, old Italian man, because I'm Italian, my of Italian descent, and we lived in the Italian section of Newark, New Jersey. And it was across from Branch Brook Park, which is a beautiful park, and most beautiful park I've ever seen in my life. But we lived in an old converted Victorian house. My Aunt Angelina and Uncle Al lived on the middle floor. We were on the first floor, and Nanny and Pop were on the top of the house. And this crazy old man would come every night into my room, the spirit, and slash at me with a butcher knife. And I was about two and a half or three. So, I would just sit there and watch him. And I would say to him, I know you're not real. I know that you're a ghost. And I would say, and you need to leave. But he wouldn't leave. And he was speaking Italian. I didn't understand that much Italian, so I can't tell you what he was saying. But I would scream for my parents because he wouldn't go. And they would come in, and the minute they turned the light on, he would disappear. And so they would get very angry at me. So because they were both Capricorns and they wanted to sleep. And so I learned that I was on my own. I knew that right away. I mean, this isn't going to work. Calling them is not going to work. But I knew to go to my gram. And she explained that people in our family are psychic. It was passed to her from her grandmother, And interestingly enough, all my children, I had three children, and all three of them are psychic or were psychic. So, Samantha has passed, but she's an angel, but she was very psychic, maybe the most out of all three. But they are, and a bunch of my grandchildren. It's like one after another. They just, will come to me and say, like the little Gia, we were on vacation and I knew there was a ghost in the Airbnb that we were in. And I wasn't going to tell anybody and figure I just deal with it. So she's in the bathroom and I hear her say, will you stop crying over there? I'm just a little kid. I can't do anything to help you. You need to leave. So I went flying into the bathroom and there's nobody there. And she says to me, Grandma, could you help me with this lady over here who won't stop crying? And so there you go. That was how I found out that Gia has the gift. So I was able to deal with that. And so, when I was little, I thought it was cool that it was something I could do, but it was also frightening. So I had respect for it. Then again, I thought to be like my Gram, who was the greatest person who ever lived, was the best thing ever. And strangely enough, because we have talked about this, I never was worried about what people would think. Very strange that that just wasn't in me. And I never have. I never have cared what people thought about the fact that I'm psychic. I don't care if they don't believe in it. And I tell them, that's fine. You don't have to. It doesn't offend me. It doesn't bother me, you know? And I have not been attacked in my lifetime ever. I have not been singled out or attacked or bullied or anything. I'm 77. Go figure. I've just had a strange experience. It doesn't follow what most people have. Maybe it's because I have that attitude. I don't expect to be attacked. I don't expect anyone to care. And I expect the right people to find me, and that seems to be what happens. So there you go. Do you have anything you'd like to add
Well,
right now, or I'll just go on and on?
well, for me, I think it's been a bit of both. I came into it much later in life and I wasn't expecting it. I kind of got pushed into it and it was very overwhelming.
Right.
On the
I
one
can
hand,
understand that.
what a blessing to know that beyond a shadow of a doubt that we go on, that this isn't it.
Hmm.
To be able to connect to family, some that I never got to meet. What a blessing that is.
Very cool.
Um, it's just it's been quite a gift, but it has been overwhelming. There have been times where I just couldn't take it anymore, and I told all of my guides to go haunt somebody else and leave me alone.
Right.
Um, and I remember when I was doing readings in a psychic shop in San Diego, one of my friends there who also did readings, we were talking one day and he said that this has ruined me for any kind of regular job. And I immediately knew what he meant because
Mhm.
it's difficult when you know that we all go on, that everybody that you ever met is more than just okay. If they have passed, they're more than just okay. They're
Mhm.
fine. They feel better than they probably ever did when they were on this side, and it's just so big, and it makes the day to day stuff that we have to do here seem really insignificant, if
Mhm.
not just stupid. And it is difficult to want to be able to do that, to be able to do, I don't know what a regular job is, but I think everybody has an idea of what that means, at least for them. But to be able to do some kind of regular job where metaphysical stuff is not involved at all, whether you're practicing a trade, whether you're in a service industry, whatever you're doing, it is difficult to shut out all of the metaphysical stuff, all the psychic stuff, to shut that out, to be able to focus on what feels like a menial task. And I get that that's difficult. I had many jobs before that I don't think I could do now because it's so it's just the metaphysical path that I'm on now is so big, and it I just don't know that I could do that other kind of stuff. And I don't want this to sound like, oh, poor Ken, his brain is messed up and he wants everybody to. I don't want you to feel sorry for me because, as I said, what an amazing gift this is. My father passed away just over 5 years ago, and to know that he feels better than he did the last couple of years, he felt lousy, felt
Yeah.
really bad. And to know that all of that is gone now and he feels great. Um, and to know that, that from time to time he's around. What an amazing gift that is. But at the same time, spirit doesn't always respect your boundaries, respect your timetable.
Mm.
So when you are doing something else that requires attention and focus and your dead dad shows up, it kind of makes it a little difficult to keep working on the paperwork or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yes.
And and I know for anybody who hasn't had this kind of experience, this sounds crazy, but you also don't want to say to somebody that you love, you don't want to say, Dad, I'm really busy right now. Buzz off.
Right. Right.
You know,
No.
even if you feel like that, you don't want to say that. So it's really, for me, it's really both. It's a blessing. What an amazing gift it is. I feel very, very fortunate. And part of the reason that I started doing psychic tapestry and keep it going is because I think it's important to bring that message to as many as I can who are willing to hear it, that we all go on, that everybody that you have ever known and ever loved didn't die as we think. They just, it's kind of like they moved to somewhere else
Hmm.
that
That's exactly
you
it.
don't have a passport for, so you can't go there and you can't text them and you can't
Calling.
email and you can't call,
Mhm.
but they're fine. They're better than fine. They're better than they ever were when they were here. Any of their ailments are gone. So what an amazing blessing that is. But
I agree with that.
that it's not always easy to just turn it on and turn it off
There you go.
makes it, I don't want to say a curse. There have only been a couple times where I've felt like it was a curse, and usually that was because I didn't have enough sleep, um, and I was just cranky. But
Yeah.
it's a challenge. It can make things that shouldn't be challenging just because your perspective has just changed. So, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
spirits could have been hanging around you, probably have been hanging around you your whole life, and you've just been cruising along, la di da di da, didn't know they were there, might not have even cared that they were there. You went about life as usual. And then all of a sudden, you do know that they're there. And
That happens to people usually when they get Reiki training, which you got to. I know
mhm.
that you're also a Reiki master, and a lot of the time it will awaken your abilities, and people that never had abilities before will suddenly, be receiving downloads and seeing dead people or dead relatives. And usually they come flying back to me and ask for help, which is why I've been teaching the psychic development class. It was for my Reiki masters who all suddenly had abilities that they never had before. So I do understand that when your abilities come later in life, it's a different thing from when you're born with it, and you come into life with these abilities, working for you from birth. So
Well,
you have a different attitude toward it, I think. I
I,
know I do.
I'm not a Reiki master. I have had some Reiki training, but
Well,
I
it was
have not.
enough. It helped to
Well,
punch up your abilities even more, right?
um, probably. I don't
Yeah.
know. I had connected with somebody who was not a great teacher, but I wasn't looking for a teacher, and a lot of this kind of stuff freaked me out. I was
Uh,
a skeptic because it hadn't happened to me, and she thought that was funny, so she sort of pushed for some things to happen to me,
oh,
which made it difficult.
yeah.
And then, for anybody who comes into this later in life who hasn't sought out a teacher, a mentor, anything, and you've come into this having these experiences and not knowing what to do about it, who to talk to, is tough. When you don't know who to talk to and you think that an uncle who passed away 30 years ago stopped by to tell you how proud he is of you, that's really nice. But what do I do with that? And how do I know if it's real or if I'm just losing my mind? And who do I talk to? Can't really just go to anybody. Can't really say, hey,
No, you can't.
my dead uncle just stopped by and he said, where are you going? You can't just do, so that was difficult. There were a lot of times where I thought I was just I was losing my mind, and I had connections because of my love of music. I had connections to spirit that had
Mhm.
music connections, and my wife likes to say that I am a lighthouse for the other side for music
I
people.
like that.
I like it too, but
Hmm.
when it first started happening, and I'm beside myself. When you add that into everything else, it was really, really difficult just to just to try and get a handle on it.
Hmm.
There's the one thing of having an uncle or a grandfather that I never met, making connections there. That's one thing, and that's really cool, and it's an amazing gift. And 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 that's great. But to then make a connection to a singer or a musician that I had known of, but had never had any connection to, but to get to have this feel like you have this connection to somebody who was famous, and it's hard not to think that, okay, well, this is a bridge too far. And who do I go to about that? And really, even if I decided that, well, I'm going to find psychics on Facebook or somewhere, somebody who's teaching um, mediumship, and how do you go to somebody and say, I am pretty sure that Frank Sinatra's hanging around,
I love that.
but they'll laugh at you and they'll. But I hesitate, even with that, I hesitate to say it's a curse
Yeah,
because I don't I
that's a
feel
heavy
very
word.
fortunate. I don't always know what to do with it. I have never been one who enjoys something that's just for me. And my wife Lisa will sometimes say that, that this is just for you. This is something that's just for you. I mean, I have never tried to use this in a money making sort of capacity that I'll do readings and I'll get insights into your love life from insert famous person here. Um, because I just think that's kind of creepy, and I don't think that that's why any of those any of those spirits are hanging around me or connect with me from time to time. So that has been a challenge also, just trying to figure out the why. Because we're human and we like to know why weird things happen.
Very
And,
true.
and why did any of this? But since this did, I can't go back. I can't pretend that it didn't. I have, and since most of this is going to be audio, I won't bother going to dig it out, but I have tangible evidence that I pull out for myself from time to time. There was I early on, I attended this spirit gallery kind of thing. And the medium that was doing it said that my grandfather was there and he was showing her this black folder binder, something like that, that he thought I would like. And he died the a few months before I was born.
Mm.
So this was 13, 14, 15 years ago. There was nobody around that I could certainly go and ask. My grandmother wasn't around anymore. And I have no idea what happened to stuff, but I'm trying to think of he was an accountant, and this sounded like some kind of ledger that maybe had some family significance or something, but there wasn't anybody I could ask, hey, what happened to Grandpa's old books 50 years ago? There was nobody I could ask. And if there were, someone would want to know why. And then it would be tough to go, well, because he said that there's a book for me somewhere. So that would be tough. So I didn't
Yeah.
know what to do with that. But a week or two later, I was telling Lisa that I had these old scrapbooks, these family scrapbooks. Um, and I had a picture of a great, possibly two greats, great great uncle from the turn of the last century, so like 1900. And he had an amazing turn of the century kind of giant mustache. And I wanted to show it to her. So I went and I got this box of scrapbooks and I opened it up. And underneath the first scrapbook was this giant black folder. And it had a post it note on it that said, for Ken. And I had been through this box so many times in the 25, 30 years that I had it. The box had fallen apart. I'd taken everything out and put it in another box. So I knew it was in there. And this black folder wasn't there before, but it was there now. And I took it out and I opened it. And it was a beautiful professional photograph of my grandfather when he was about my age.
Wow.
And I'd never seen that picture before. I know that that wasn't in there before. There's no way I could prove it to anybody else. But for me, I know. I have shown that to other family members and they like the picture, that it's beautiful. They don't remember it. Nobody wants to talk about how it is that it's suddenly turned up. But for me, that I'm very fortunate that I have this thing that is tangible, what I feel for me, tangible proof, because I know it wasn't there before and it's there now. And what I figure is that this was something that my aunt had. These were all her scrapbooks, and this was something that she had for me, and she probably put that post-it note on it to remind herself to give it to me, and she passed away and this got misplaced somewhere, and my grandfather unmisplaced it and put it in that box of stuff for me. That's the best I can figure out what happened, but I know it wasn't there before, and then it was. And I can't prove that to anybody else, but I don't have to. It's good enough for
Yeah,
me. So
exactly.
that's a big thing on the blessing side. On the curse side, it's a great story that I can't really share with just anybody. I mean, I'm sharing it on this episode, so really anybody in the whole world could find out about it. But it's not a story that I can really tell just anyone. And it's crazy that something so amazing makes some people afraid, uncomfortable, distrustful. So it's both for me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's both.
I don't find like I said, I have never been challenged. I've never been made to feel like I was crazy. Maybe I'm just not sensitive enough to notice it. And that could be because I'm pretty dense sometimes. I just keep on going.
Well,
But
let me
one
let me throw this one thing in, and
yeah, yeah,
then I'll be quiet.
you
Um,
don't have to be quiet.
the psychic shop where I used to work in San Diego, and I say it like that because it's no longer there. The woman that owned it retired, but they had from time to time this couple that would come in to do these. They weren't exactly spirit galleries. He would relay messages from spirit, and she would draw a sketch of someone in spirit that she saw there. And then once he was done, she would show the sketch, and somebody would go, "Oh my God, that's my great grandfather," or something like that.
Very cool.
I um I was frequently there running the cash register and sort of being security. And the night that the next time they were coming or whatever, my uncle had passed away, and I was going to attend the funeral. So Lisa was there in my stead, and I flew across the country. And while I was in the airport waiting for the plane, they were doing their thing, and the woman had made a sketch of someone she saw in the back, and who was just standing there, and nobody claimed him. Nobody recognized him. So she turned the picture to Lisa, and Lisa said, "Oh my God, that's Ken's grandfather." And she took a picture of it and sent it to me.
Very
And
cool.
it did look, and she said, "He's here to let family know that their loved one is safe and he's with him." And
Oh,
this was, and my uncle was his son. So I find this out as I'm going to the funeral, which is now this is a huge thing that I'm going to see family, and most of my family is not okay with this stuff, and they don't want to. So I wasn't going to say anything, but I also had flown on a red eye, so I was really tired that morning when I arrived in Florida from San Diego. My sister picked me up, so I relayed this story to her, thinking that this was in confidence, and I showed her the picture. And then later at a family get together, she says something about it in front of everyone that I should tell everybody. So I was put on the spot. So I relayed the story as best that I could, kind of like I just did, and I
mhm.
had the added thing of the photo. And for most of the people who weren't going to believe, really, no matter what I said, they don't like this kind of stuff. They're not comfortable with it. They're not going to believe it. They looked at the picture and they said, "Well, he should have a mustache." And inside, I'm just thinking, "Oh my God, you recognize the sketch that someone made who did not know, had never seen, had no connection to, had no inkling about my grandfather. And she made this freehand sketch, but he doesn't have a mustache. So you're dismissing everything."
Mm.
But that's how, that's how some people are about it, at least with me. And that's one of the things that I don't feel like it's a curse, but
Yeah,
it makes it a
yeah,
challenge.
it does. Yeah. Well, people are at different places on their path, and it took me a while to realize that. And now that I do, it's more understandable. We have to let people be where they are. We can't, unless they ask for our help to move along, we have to let them be where they are and try not to let it bother you. That's the hard part. But there was one time, well, more than one, but I'll give you one example of when I felt like it was a curse. And this incident contributed to me looking for a psychic to study with because I felt like, well, I was given this information in a dream from my guides and angels that a terrible tragedy was going to happen in our family. And I wasn't able, well, I guess, I'll tell you the incident and then you'll understand why I felt like I needed to study so that I would have a better handle on how to handle my abilities, basically. So I married Tiffany's dad, and he had a daughter, a 15 year, 18 actually. She was 18 at the time. Her name was Susan, and she came to visit, and we got to be very close, and she would come almost every weekend. And she got to be really good friends with my daughter at the time, Samantha. They were the same age at that time. Well, I had a dream, and in the dream, I saw Susan being murdered, stabbed, and it was horrific. And then I saw the man run away, and I saw him hiding in a basement, an abandoned basement. And anyway, it was just a horrible dream, horrible. And it really shook me up. So she came that weekend, and I agonized if I should tell her. And of course, I did. I had to tell her. And I told my husband, Fred, at the time, and he agreed that we had to tell her. So he was with me when I told her. And he was convinced of my abilities, having, known me for a while. So he didn't even doubt that I had that ability. So we're telling her about this dream that I had. And she looks right at me very blankly, very boldly, and says, "Oh, I know I'm going to die young." And I said, "What?" She was a Scorpio too, and they're usually very intuitive. And I said, "Why would you say that?" And she said, "Well, I was in New York City. That's where she lived. We were on the East Coast at the time. That's where we lived." And she said, "I went to a psychic with a bunch of my friends. And when the psychic got to me, she said, 'You have no future. You're going to die this year.'" I thought, well, that's a heck of a message to
Wow.
give to an 18-year-old girl. I mean, I had a lot of problem with that. But she said, "No, I'm fine with it." And I said, "Susan, you know, I think you could change this. If you know about it, if you've been warned, I think you can change it." And I told her about, about the dream and everything. And I said, and you need to take precautions. I said, "You were alone in your apartment with, and she was in an apartment that she lived in with her mother." And she said, "Well, my mom is going to Aruba next week, and I'm going to stay there alone for the whole week because I'm 18 now and I can." And her adult brother and sister had tried to talk her out of it too. And I said, "Please come and stay with us." I said, don't stay alone." And she wouldn't. She would not listen to us. And she was murdered that weekend by a man. And he stabbed her 74 times.
Oh my
I'll never
God.
forget it. Yep. And when he left, he took her address book, strangely enough. And our number was in it. I was pregnant with Tiffany at the time. And so I was isolated. And we lived in one of my husband's developments. He was a land developer. So I was in a house that was still on dirt roads. They hadn't put in the roads yet. So I was very isolated, and I thought this guy's not, he wouldn't be able to find me anyway. But long story short, he called me on the phone, the murderer, and he said, "You're next, and I'm coming to get you." And he said, "You know what I did to Susan? I'm going to come and I'm going to kill you." And it was pretty shocking.
Oh my
So we
God.
called the New York Police Department, and they tapped our phone, and they listened to me. I told them the whole thing. I told them I'd had the dream and everything. And anyway, long story short, he was eventually caught. But I was laying in my bed. It was a high risk pregnancy because I was older. And when I had Tiffany, I was 37, which is considered high risk. So I'm laying there with a 357 Magnum from my husband's gun collection, ready to do what I had to do if this guy did come, but he never did. But they did find him, and I had another dream where he was crouching in this basement. That's where he was living in an abandoned basement. So what he did was go back to the scene of the crime. And I had told the police I thought he was going to show back up over there. Now, what they didn't tell me was that there had been a witness to the two of them going in the house that day, to Susan and the man that she was with. And it was a little girl, 5 years old, that lived next door to her. So she was out that day riding her bike when he came back and stood across the street and stared at the house and just stared at the house for the longest time. So she went in the house, called her, told her mother, they called the police, and they actually got him. So
Wow.
they did get him. There was a trial and everything. This was on the news. We saw it all over the news, the New York news. But anyway, long story short, he was living in that basement that I had seen. I just couldn't tell them where. So all of this led me to great despair at the time. And I thought, why do I have these abilities? I was told something and I couldn't change it. And it got me so upset. So later, when I went to study with Marianne Michaels, I did eventually find a good teacher. And she told me, well, there are some things you can't change. That's basically the whole thing. And you have to accept that. So I was so angry at that. I said to my guides, please do not give me any more information that I cannot change because this is not productive. I thought it was a curse to know something like that, to warn somebody so passionately, and then to have them be murdered. It was terrible. I have one other story like that before I studied and got more enlightenment.
Okay.
My son, I woke up one morning when he was 14, and we lived in the Pocono Mountains at that time, and there was a lot of snow and ice. And it wasn't a snowy day or anything, but I woke up and I had the feeling that he was going to have a terrible accident. So that would logically translate to something having to do with a car or a bus, and he was riding the school bus. So I kept both the kids home that day, and I thought, I'm just going to avoid this whole thing happening. I'm keeping him in the house. I'm going to watch him all day, and nothing will happen to him. Well, around 4 o'clock, the kids were begging me to go outside. So I agreed they could, and they wanted to throw a ball back and forth. So they went out to throw the ball. Samantha at the time was on the porch. She was little. She was like 8 or 9. And Will was 14. And they were throwing the ball back and forth, and the ball hit this freestanding brick wall that was there, and it had like a big planter on top, ceramic planter with flowers in it. And we didn't realize that throwing whatever you throw outside to melt the ice in the winter, it had eroded the cement on this freestanding wall. So it started to teeter back and forth. And my son is such a fixer of problems. He ran up to try to catch the wall or stop it from falling, and it crushed both of his legs. It fell on him.
Oh my God.
Yep. And Samantha lifted that up herself. She
Wow.
screamed, and I ran outside. Her adrenaline kicked in, and she pulled that, lifted it right off of her brother. Unbelievable. But anyway, long story short, he had to lay on the floor he asked to be in the living room so that he was afraid to be upstairs in case of a fire. I mean, we of course would not have left him upstairs. But,
Right.
he's a very practical soul. So we brought his bed down to the living room, and it took a long time for him to heal. It was a long time. He went through a lot. And I remember thinking, why am I given these messages and then I can't change it? I actually kept him home, and that's where it happened. So I had to go study. But I basically learned that you can't do anything about some things. They are supposed to happen for whatever reason. We don't know why, but I couldn't stop it. And I couldn't stop the murder. So to me, that made my abilities a curse. But now I have a different opinion. You can only try, and you cannot make people listen to you, and you cannot make people do anything. So If it's meant to be, it's going to happen no matter what you do. So I'm more at peace with all of that. And my ability saved my life once. I don't know if I've told this story yet on the show. This is the last thing I'll contribute. But when I was 5, there was a series of murders that had happened on the route that I had to walk home. Little girls were being taken and killed and strangled and thrown in the woods. And I walked right by those woods every day. And back in those days, you'd think maybe my mom would have walked me to school or something. But no, you were on your own back in the 50s and we kind of survived. But anyway, so one day I'm coming home from school and for whatever reason, I didn't have friends with me. I don't know if they were all sick that day or why, or if I stayed late. I don't remember why, but I was walking alone, probably the first time ever. And as I passed the candy store, a man stepped up, stepped in front of me, and stopped me. And he said, "Hi, Toni." And I said, I was immediately very suspicious. I could feel the vibes coming off of him. This was a dangerous man. And I backed up. I knew not to get too close to him. And he'd take a step toward me, I'd take a step back. And he said, "I'm friends with your dad, and he told me to come and pick you up. And I'm going to bring you to your dad." So I said, "You don't know my dad, and you're not friends with him." And he said, "Why do you say that?" I said, "Because I know my dad's friends. And my dad would never send someone to pick me up. He would have told me." So I said, "Get away from me. I'm not going with you." I was kind of an outspoken kid, which is probably in my favor. So I started to back away and walk toward home. And he kept saying, "Well, your dad told me and you're going to get in trouble." And I'd say, "That's okay, I'll take the trouble." And I started to walk quickly away. Well, he followed me, but he stayed back. And this was a very busy, busy road. There were like a million cars. So I was not allowed to walk along where there was no sidewalk. I was supposed to go down that road that was very deserted, and that's where the girls' bodies were found. So all he had to do was follow me down there and he could grab me. And I knew that. And I knew this was the murderer. I just knew it. So I made an executive decision at 5. I'm going to take the hit and I'm going to walk on the side, on the curb right by this traffic. And I'm going to get around this, to where my street is and run up that way and get in my house and tell my mother. And I was determined to do it. So he's following me and I did it. And I got home. And we called the cops and the police. They came. I was interviewed. My family was interviewed. They never got him. They never got that man. And it haunted me forever. But my ability saved my life. I knew that he was a dangerous person. And even to this day, if I shake someone's hand, I get a download of who they are, pertinent information that I have no business knowing. And that's an intrusive thing. But it helps. It helps in life, I will say that. So I have decided that my abilities are a blessing. And if you have a problem with knowing things that you can't change, the best way to handle it is to talk to your guides because they can control how you get your information. And so now I no longer receive information about things I cannot change.
I haven't had any of those kind of experiences. Um, I
I have a
remember
million of them. That's what,
I
so what my abilities were. Go ahead.
I remember early on I had asked my guides not to scare me, not to show me anything
Mm,
that was gonna scare me. Don't pop up in front of me. Don't suddenly
right.
be looking at me in a mirror. I
Yeah.
don't want to. I don't want to be scared.
Yeah, I've got that deal too with them.
And I don't know if that includes seeing something that's going to happen or that might happen. I don't know if that includes that or not, or maybe that's just not part of my stuff, my
Right.
abilities. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't really tried and I'm not eager to. I have enough trouble handling day-to-day stuff as it is without getting extra information on things that might happen.
Right.
Um, besides, I'm a Virgo, so I've already explored all the possible things that could happen from everything that I do.
That's
So
right.
you want to show me what's going to happen? Show me them drawing the Powerball numbers for the next time far enough in advance so that then I can go and get a ticket. That's fine. You can show me that. Otherwise, just keep all the other stuff.
That's right.
I think when you're talking about changing what is going to happen or what may happen, I
Hmm.
think about a lot of people who have been on various episodes and asked us questions about love or about business.
Hmm.
And you could tell that they don't like the answers that they get. And when we used to do this on Blog Talk,
Right.
there were a lot of people who used to do psychic shopping where they would keep calling different shows to get somebody to give them the answer they want.
Right.
And
That's
and
true.
there are, and you can't, when somebody asks you something or gives you anything and you get information from spirit and you tell them and they don't like what you have to say, you can't do anything about that. If somebody is miserable because they're alone, but they don't want to do any of the things to meet people, there's nothing that you can do about
Right.
that. If they're determined to wait for somebody that they broke up with to come back, they're going to miss a lot of opportunities, and you can't do anything about that either.
That's right.
And sometimes that's tough.
It's frustrating.
I have felt for some of these people, and you can, just listening to them talk, you can feel the pain,
Right.
but they won't.
They
They,
won't listen.
they've they
Right.
just get so comfortable in that pain, I guess, that they don't want to do anything to change it.
Yeah.
And that is frustrating, but I don't feel like that's on either side. I
Right.
I feel like both of us on this podcast do what we can to convey messages from spirit and to help with whatever we can with whatever messages we can give, but it's the responsibility of whoever's
Right.
asking the questions to process that information and do what they feel is best.
That's exactly right.
If they don't like what we have to say, it's not our responsibility to make them like
Nope.
it. Um,
I guess I felt like it was, in those instances, and now I realize it's not. So you're
yeah,
correct. I
and
agree with
that's
you.
that
Yeah.
that's tough when you can, when you hear from someone and you can so clearly see
Yeah.
what their problem is
Yeah.
and an obvious solution, sometimes obvious enough that you don't have to have any sort of abilities to
Right.
see it,
It's good advice.
but
They won't take it.
they won't take it. And
Mhm.
it's frustrating, but there's not anything that we can do. I don't
Nope.
feel like that's a blessing or a curse.
Nope. It
Um,
just is. It's just a occupational
yeah.
issue. Really. That's what
So
it is.
would you change anything about your abilities,
That's
knowing what you know
that's
now?
that's a good question. No. And there was another time they told me that I was going to live past Samantha's life, but they told me when she was 2 years old, my guides told me. And it threw me into a hysterical frenzy. But I remember thinking, well, they're trying to help me because I said to them, can I change this? Please, could I die instead of her? Everything I was trying to bargain. And then they said, no, but she'll be a very old woman. And when they told me that part, I thought, oh, okay. I knew I was going to get very, very old in this lifetime, which I'm working on right now. So that kind of made it better. And she did die before me. And the last time I saw her, they even told me this is the last time you're going to ever see her. but she didn't pass for another 2 years. But I moved to Houston and then spent the next 2 years trying to get her to move here, but she didn't. She died of a massive heart attack in her sleep. But I wasn't mad at them then. I was much older by then. And I think I understood they were trying to help me because I was able to accept it. And I think it did help me that I knew all those years that I was going to go before her. And I accepted that. I'm just grateful I got to be her mom for 39 years. So,
I don't know if there's anything that I would change. I would like to have a better handle on it. I would like it to have been my choice,
oh,
but
okay. That's a good one. That makes sense.
I don't I don't know that I would I can't because it is such a gift,
Yeah.
and I just to and none of my guides have ever told me that this was going to happen or don't do this, except that they like to tell me that playing the lottery is a fool's errand,
Right.
but I don't listen.
Right.
You can make your own judgments on that. But they haven't told me don't go here, don't do that, don't you know. There have been I feel like there have been times where I've had car trouble and I feel like maybe that was to keep me from being somewhere I shouldn't have been.
Yep.
Um,
Guaranteed.
and things like that where I've gotten caught at so many lights, ridiculous number of lights in a row that should not have all turned red as I approached. It shouldn't have worked that way, but
Yeah.
it did.
Right. It
And
did.
sometimes I try to think that it's my guides trying to keep me from being somewhere I shouldn't be. And when I'm calm, I can do that. When I'm in traffic, I'm not always calm. So sometimes I just swear a lot at the lights, which probably makes my guides think it's very funny.
They do. I know they're
And
laughing at that.
and there could be times where they just make the lights change to get me to react like that because they think it's funny. And it may not be protecting me from anything. I don't know. When I get to the other side, I'll ask. But
That's it. We'll find out then. And
yeah,
I too would not change my abilities,
yeah.
especially now because I'm able to work at something that I love and continue to work indefinitely as long as I can talk.
I would like more validation about some things. And I honestly don't know how I would get that because I have had some from you, some from a couple other
Oh, yeah.
mediums that I am friends with, and I can't help but sometimes feel like, oh, sure, they're saying that. They're my friends. I need
Oh,
to
no,
feel,
no, no. I've seen you. You once someone called in and their mom had died, as I recall, and you knew her name. I was blown away.
well,
That's
there have
very specific. That was excellent. Excellent hit.
there have been there have been times where that kind of thing happens, but
Hmm. That's validation.
I'm thinking about some of the more well-known spirits that I believe that I feel around me, and it would be,
Oh, I believe it.
oh, I know you do,
Yeah,
and I believe it too. It would be nice to have the opportunity to have someone that I didn't know who didn't know me make a comment beforehand that
right.
why am I thinking of Johnny Cash when you're talking? Okay, that
Yeah,
would be nice.
yeah.
That would be nice. But so maybe that's a little thing that I would change. But I think for most people with psychic abilities, extra validation is something that I think that's something everybody wants.
Well, yeah,
Extra validation.
it helps. It helps.
Yeah.
I always like it when a client will tell me, come back and tell me everything you said happened, or thank you for the reading for whatever reason. So it's good. It does. It helps to keep you going. It
Yeah.
really does.
Yeah.
It's very nice to have validation.
But otherwise, I just, I just think that the pros way outweigh the cons.
I agree.
I
I
I
agree.
mean, I know not everybody believes what I believe, what I feel, what I have experienced, and I wouldn't. I don't want to change them. I'd like it if they had some kind of understanding, but I had somebody close to me who says the best I can do is tell you I believe that you believe, and that's something at least. But I don't know that how I would want to change that because I don't want to change anybody. So
Right.
so I really don't. I don't know. Other than having it be my choice to go down this path, having it be my choice to pursue mediumship, that I would change if I could. But otherwise, I don't know. Would I like it to have happened earlier in my life? I don't know because everything that happened to me before led me to where I am now. So
Hmm.
it would it would all be different. This wouldn't just be an extra superpower that I carried along to everything that happened. Everything that would have happened before would be would be different. So,
Mm, true.
but I think I definitely think it's more of a blessing.
I agree. So we concur.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Psychic abilities are a blessing,
Yes.
and we should be
For
grateful
us.
for us.
And I bet most people
I think so. I
I
mean, it's
think they
getting
would.
more mainstream and popular.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got an awful lot of clients. I can't even tell you. It's like it's incredible. And they all believe and they all seem to need my help. It's amazing. It's mind-boggling. The world has grown up and they have expanded their consciousness, definitely, in a spiritual sense, because it is more mainstream. I think I just run in a lot of spiritual circles exclusively because like I said, it's almost amazing that I don't have anybody, you know, giving me any negatives for it, but I don't.
Well, I think most people could cherry pick things out of their life that they would say, well, this is a curse or that's a curse or
Yeah,
whatever. And I think that that goes for people with psychic abilities as well, with those who have not developed theirs yet, because I think
yeah.
we all have them.
I am glad that I did go and study. I learned a lot. I learned how to shut it down to an extent. I can't get it all the way shut down, but I don't really want to shut it all the way down either because I want to be able to get the little messages that are important for safety's sake or, and there are so many other messages that I have given to people that have helped them and that they've listened to. I gave you a couple of examples of people who didn't listen and bad things happening, but there have been many more where the people did listen and things
Yeah.
were avoided or not as bad. Yeah.
Well, I think it's also a blessing that we get to do this podcast. And I think
Yes.
it's a blessing for everybody who downloads or listens or shows up at a
Hopefully.
live recording. And and thank you all for that. I believe we'll be back 2 weeks from tonight,
Yes.
which is the 21st.
Okay.
121. We'll have official posts on our social media and on the calendar at psychictapestry.com. If you don't want to wait 2 weeks, you can reach out to us through the website and arrange for a private reading from Toni or from me. Otherwise, Toni, thank you for giving up a chunk of your Tuesday night for us.
So glad to be here. Wouldn't be anywhere else.
And thank you for listening. Thanks
Yeah.
everybody for listening. We love you and we're very grateful. It is a gift, a blessing that you're here, and
Yes, it is.
and we thank you. And we'll see you in a couple weeks. In the meantime, Take care of yourselves and remember to tell those close to you that you love them. And we'll
You
talk soon.